While the current setting of Tevat is somewhat peaceful, at least compared to the chaos of the Archon War, the world is still populated by many dangerous things. Evil gods, malicious puppets, monsters, and scheming organizations are but some of the examples of these dangers. Sea monsters and dragons are often considered as calamities and natural disasters simply because no normal human can hope to stand against them. Every so often, though, there are humans who appear that have the strength to combat such beings. The Conqueror of the Sea, Beidou, is one such enigmatic figure. But did she really kill the sea monster that propelled her to fame? Before we get into that, if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, do consider subscribing to the channel. As famous and great of a person Beidou currently is, her origins are far humbler. We don't know much of her early days or who her parents were, but from a very young age, Beidou was a homeless orphan. She would often scrounge for food and had to wander the streets with no place to go. At one point, after taking pity on her, some fishermen brought her back to their village. It was a small fishing village called Downriver, and they taught her to fish and do other odd jobs. In her earlier days, this was how she first survived. Eventually, though, a series of misfortunes fell upon the village. The village chief had become sick, the population of fish had decreased, and it was becoming harder for the villagers to survive. As things became more desperate, they eventually started blaming Beidou for their misfortunes and how she had brought them bad luck. Part of this was due to her name, as Beidou later found out, but that's a story for another day. Of course, Beidou had nothing to do with this, but misfortune and desperation led them to such claims. Eventually, Beidou would leave and make her way to Liyue Harbor and would try building a new life. She had saved enough to buy her own boat, but even then her life was filled with nothing but hardships. From this point, we don't really know how she became the person she is now, but given her character, it's likely she did it through sheer will and effort alone. The Beidou of today is an individual who is highly respected both as a captain and experienced sailor. But is she really that capable of a person, or are these just exaggerated stories? Most in Liyue know of Beidou due to her reputation as the captain of the Crux fleet, but by her own admission, she isn't as special as others claim her to be. A lot of this has to do with how her own crew sings her praises. Each time they dock at the harbor, the crew of the Crux fleet would often spend their time off in bars or relaxing in town. They would often share stories with people they meet, and the more this happens, the more fantastical the stories become. Now that being said, Beidou is still a very experienced and capable captain. Throughout her hangout event, the traveler had to learn the many different skills required to be a crewmate aboard her ship, the Alcor. It involved learning cartography, medical knowledge, and even meteorology. While the traveler did learn from many of the crew, each of them had expressed their admiration for Beidou as she had proficiency in all these different areas. In fact, most of them started out learning from Beidou herself, and even when they are already experts, their captain still has plenty of surprises hidden in her sleeves. This is what makes her such a great captain. She is not someone who is only capable as a fighter, but rather is experienced in all aspects of sailing, and is able to perform most of the ship's duties just by herself. Her rather broad knowledge base allows her to relate many different skills and experience to create the best results. She has spent so much time out at sea as a ship captain that she is even able to discern changes in the weather and the behavior of the ocean just by sound alone. During the attack on Liyue by the sea monster Beidou, I don't know. It was actually Beidou who warned Ningguang on the imminent attack, as she could identify minor disturbances and movements along the ocean floor. This particular skill would be what allowed her to contend with the sea serpent which was mentioned earlier in this video. The story of how Beidou got famous is rather well known, and it involves her battle with an infamous sea monster. But as the video title puts into question, did Beidou really kill the Leviathan known as Haishan? It's difficult to imagine a mere human could defeat such a dangerous beast. I mean, Haishan was described as a hydra, a combination of fish and dragon, and was said to be gargantuan in size, dwarfing most vessels. Not only that, but it was said to be as strong as even a god, able to raise the oceans on a whim. Well, the short story is yes, but it wasn't as fantastical as many have claimed, nor was it as easy as often these sort of stories make them seem. Most who depend on the sea for their livelihood have heard of this beast, and it's said that for most career seafarers, Haishan is an inevitability. Spend enough time out in the open oceans and you'll run into it eventually. Haishan as a legend has been around even when Beidou was really young. She even wished to slay the beast one day and had fought against it several times before, but each time she failed and got away with barely her life. In their final confrontation, the battle raged for 4 days, with the monster attacking and retreating to the depths. Even when they managed to tie the beast down, it wasn't accepting its defeat so easily. It thrashed, got loose, and again hid within the depths, waiting for the Crux fleet to lower their guard. Remember I mentioned how Beidou was skilled enough to determine minute changes of the ocean from winds, the sound, and the feel of waves alone? Well, this was the key to how she ultimately defeated it. On the very last day, when night finally came, the sea fell silent. None among the crew dared to relax their guard and was vigilant, while Beidou stood on the prow of her flagship intently listening. At the crack of dawn, after an entire night of waiting, the sound of the waves changed. Immediately, Beidou prepared herself, and as the beast surfaced, she immediately struck. With a single swing, she completely beheaded the Leviathan before it could even completely surface. As the final blow struck, a single bolt of lightning cracked from the skies and struck the ocean itself as Beidou was doused in the raining blood of the now dead Leviathan. So yes, Beidou did slay this monster, but not without the support and assistance of her crew and fleet, and it wasn't an easy fight either. And the odd thing is that following this strike of lightning, Beidou received her vision. The reason this is odd is because most visions are given to those who are chasing after a particular goal or ambition. It tends to occur when one is at the beginning of their journey and has resolved to achieve their goal no matter what. Beidou, on the other hand, had just completed hers, a desire she wished fulfilled since she was 9 years old. It's mentioned in her vision lore that she received this as a recognition for her feat of slaying and subduing the monster Haishan, but this sort of reason is largely unprecedented. The gods likely award visions to those with high ambitions because they are the most likely candidates to follow through on the journey to become gods. So why was Beidou granted one at the end of her completing her life goal? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that perhaps what Beidou killed wasn't just any monster. We know that many of the gods who had once inhabited Tevat left for the open seas as they did not want to be ruled by the Seven and associate themselves with Celestia. Perhaps what Beidou killed was actually one of these old gods, a relic of the past and a thorn at the side of Celestia and the Archons. If this were the case, it might have impressed the gods so much that instead of granting her a vision to start her on her journey, they gave her one as a reward. This feat was such an enormous one that even Shao was impressed. The most surprising thing about this story though is that Beidou accomplished this feat before obtaining a vision, which means she cleaved the head of this beast as a human. Sure, maybe you can argue that the lightning bolt sealed the deal, but Beidou decapitating this beast without the assistance of any elemental power is an insane thing for a human to achieve. So perhaps there are humans that exist who possess the strength to challenge the gods, even without visions. And maybe Celestia felt it was better to have Beidou on their side, rather than as a free agent who might eventually turn on them. Beidou, on the other hand, just views this vision as an acknowledgement of her feats and tries to set a good example to those who might be watching. And that's basically how Beidou essentially killed the sea monster. That brings this video to an end though, and if you enjoyed it, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel as we cover the lore of many other characters in Genshin as well. I'll see you in the next one, and as usual, have a nice day.